And I think that we're talking about this book, The Four Agreements, and boy, this is a perfect thing. Not to make assumptions is today's lesson. Don Miguel Ruiz wrote this book many years ago, and I read it many years ago. And so what happened is, I sort of picked the parts that I remember. And so in doing this series, I had to read it again to kind of get the meat of it. But one of the things I was kind of missing in the reading of the book again is that there seemed to be an assumption that all our belief systems, that all of our what he calls domestication, are not good. I would like to propose that I really think what he's meaning, or what I want to get out of the book, is he's asking us to evaluate. In other words, he said in the introduction in chapter 1 that we are taught things from our earliest childhood, from the society, from our parents, from the world in which we live. And I think that what happens is, over the course of our lifetime, is the awareness that we aren't just what we think we are, that actually we're the sum total of many of these instructions that we were given as children. Socrates said, like a long time ago, that the unexamined life isn't worth living. Well, isn't that what we're talking about here? That these beliefs and these ideas and concepts that we have, that until we examine them, we can't really own them and call them ours. And at the same time, some of the things that we were taught are things that we will say, no, that's not me anymore. And yet there's some things that we will reinvest ourselves in. Like, for example, I was taught as a child, and probably most of you were too, to say please and thank you when somebody gives you something. That's not something I want to let go, but it's part of my belief system, part of my social interaction structure of belief. And so it's part of who and what I am that I've looked at. And I said, nope, that is exactly what I want to see in my life and how I want to be. So it's important, I think, and what he's trying to stress in this book is that examining who we are, taking, let us call it a hard look at ourselves sometimes, that we become to realize the things that are external to us, that we are living a life that has been defined, shaped, and molded by the opinions, the beliefs, the religious upbringing of that which is around us. So now, as we mature, we want to become more aware of those beliefs and who and what we are. He says in the book that our greatest fear is not death. And I read that many years ago in some of our Unity writings, and I always put it in to a memorial service. Our greatest fear is not dying, is not death. Our greatest fear is living, because death is simply the release of the body. Now, I recognize in saying that, I don't mean it's a simplistic process. I don't mean sometimes it isn't a painful process. But on the other hand, when we understand that we're going from life to life, that we are going through disintegration, we're going through regeneration, and then to new life, we begin to understand that our life isn't just what happens to us in physical shape and form. So today, the third agreement is don't make assumptions. Now, I thought that was kind of an interesting assumption coming on the heels of last week's talk, which was don't take anything personally. Do you realize the number one assumption that we all share is it's all about me, which is what we were told in the second assumption not to do. Think about it. From the very moment we came to this earth in child form, we were self-absorbed. We have to learn to be unself-absorbed as we grow through our life. It isn't just as simple as just saying, well, today I woke up and I'm going to be self-absorbed, or I'm not going to be self-absorbed. The very first assumption we have is that it's all about me. Now, if you don't think that's powerful, I was one time had an argument with someone, a very big argument about someone. And for weeks, I would go in my mind replaying what I would say to them. If I saw them on the street today, I'd tell them, and I would have one-upped them in the conversation, and I would have done this, and I would have said that. And boy, I would have been really, really good, you know? And so I'm going on and on and on about this to this counselor. And he sat there very quietly. And you know, when a counselor is quiet, you're in trouble. Okay, just a hint. He sat there very quietly and he said, did you ever think that they're not thinking about you? I was shocked. What do you mean they're not thinking about me? Of course they're thinking about me. Look what they did to me. Look at how this is. This isn't right. This is wrong. And he said, no, they're not thinking about you. They have gone on with their life, but you have not. Well, talk about painful realization that, you know, you're right. I haven't gone on with my life because I'm stuck in the assumption that it was all about me, and that whatever they said, which was positive or negative, is all about me. So the very first assumption, it's quite the height of arrogance, really, when you think about it, that it's all about me. Of course, it's all about me. It's all about each of us in uniquely who and what we are. So we sort of dance with this understanding of our self-absorption, of our narcissistic tendencies that came from the beginning of our very breath in a physical form, and to grow in awareness that, quite frankly, there are others on the planet and they might have something to say also. Why do we make assumptions? I thought this was so interesting, and I wrote it down from the book. He says, we have the need to justify everything, to explain and understand everything in order to be safe. In order to be safe. We have millions of questions and needs that need answers to the things that a reasoning mind cannot explain. It's not important if the answer is correct, just that the answer makes us feel safe. Now think about what happened just a minute ago. We obviously were hacked during the course of our meditation. We all have made an assumption about that. Oh, those people, and what's the matter with them? And here's what happened. See, because it makes us feel safe that now we're back on Zoom together, that we're safe, that we're understanding what happened, even though quite frankly, technically, I don't know that we really understood what happened. It just did happen. So this need to feel safe begins to create these structures of knowing, we're calling assumptions, about ourselves, about life, about other things, because we want to be right. You know, when somebody asks me, well, what happened Sunday with that, with getting hacked, I'll say, okay, this is exactly what happened, because I want to be right. Oh my goodness, I want to be right. Number two, basic assumption. The first one, it's all about me. The second one is everybody believes as I do. Oh, would that be a scary world or what? I have a really good friend, and she has a way with words. And one day we were working on a document in Lightroom, and I said, this is the way you should do it. And she got a little testy with me, and she said, yes, there's the right way, the wrong way, and Mary Ann's way. Well, yes, because Marianne's way is the right way. What is she thinking? And it doesn't occur to me. I think about how many arguments my husband and I have gotten into, my people at the church have gotten into. One person one time said to me after the service, that was a really nice sermon, Marianne, but I don't agree with you. What? What do you mean you don't agree with me? It was perfect. It was beautiful. But you see, what I had to really realize is he didn't see it as I saw it. And sitting there today, as you are listening to me, some of you are saying, yeah, I see that. And others are going, I lost the whole train of thought here. I don't see it like you see it. And, it's interesting what we do when people don't see things the way we see things. Because we're right, because it's our worldview that we think they're all sharing, we just assume we haven't explained it well enough. Have you ever explained stuff to somebody over and over again? Instead of asking them the question, do you see it the same way I do? No, we're trying to desperately get them into the sphere of the way we see things so that you see things the way I see things. And it would be a very boring world if we did. But boy, sometimes it's really, really difficult, especially in our close relationships, to realize that people do not, even the people we think, yeah, they're on the same page as me. Oftentimes they're in a different movie, let alone not on the same page as me. So we make these assumptions that it's all about me, that everybody in the world sees the way I see it. And third, we make assumptions about ourselves. Now, I thought this was interesting. We make assumptions about ourselves, what we can do and what we can't do. And they constantly have to be reevaluated in light of new information, i.e., new life experiences. And I see this all the time when we travel. People will say, well, I just can't go overseas. I can't do this. And I tell you, the first 2 trips when I went overseas, we went to Israel the first year and Greece the second year. I was scared to death to go in to a store. If I wanted some chips or soda or something, just go into a store and buy some tchotchke nachi thing. I never bought anything. Okay. Then one day we were in Greece on the second trip. And we were out walking that evening, and I went into this little local grocery store, and I thought, they don't speak English, and I don't speak any Greek, and I have some Greek money, but I really don't know how much money I do have. And I walked in the store, and I remember this. I bought a Diet Coke. Wow, a big purchase, right? And I went to the check stand, and I held my hand open, and I started pushing the money toward her, like, this is what I think this money is. And she graciously took it out of my hand and smiled. And I came out of the store and I said to my husband, Patrick, I did it. I bought something in a foreign country. He was like, what's it? Because I believed I couldn't. Another story that's been kind of playing in my head, especially recently with the fires in Maui, was I was given the opportunity to go to Hawaii as part of Unity's conference, and my best friend came along with me. And we were coming in for a landing in Honolulu, and I looked out the window and I said, oh my God, look, there's Pearl Harbor. I could tell, where where we were on the island. And I looked over and she was crying. And very flippantly, I said, oh, don't worry, we won the war. She said, no, only rich people go to Hawaii. And I said, well, listen, I don't know how to tell you, rich or poor, in 5 minutes, we're going to be landing in Honolulu, and then we're going to spend a week in Maui, in Lahaina. Really hurting my heart to have a memory of that time and what has happened subsequently. And we also have to evaluate, maybe what we used to do, what we used to think, that we no longer can. I know there's some of you that have heard this phrase, as we age. Well, as we age, I used to think that I was a pretty good driver, especially at night. But as we age, I'm beginning to realize that I'm not such a good driver at night, that it's hard for me to see the road, and especially if it's raining and there's reflection and stuff. So I think I can do it. I think I'm really great at it because I always used to be able to do it. But now maybe I have to step back a bit and say, I can't do what I used to do. So this assumption about ourselves goes both ways. We stop ourselves from doing things because we think, oh, I can't do that. And on the other side, we say, oh, we can do that when we really shouldn't be for our own safety and well-being. How do we challenge these assumptions? I think that he gives us a hint here that we recognize in our assumptions, and especially when we're dealing with other people, that we don't necessarily feel safe asking a question. We don't really kind of drill down a little bit to see if I didn't explain it well, or you just don't see it the way I see it. And if you don't see it the way I see it, no matter how many times I try to re-explain it to you, you'll never see it the way I see it. But until I ask you a question about it, then I won't know that. We assume that people should know. My husband should know, and I know he's thinking the same about me. She should know. And I want you to change because I'm right. So the third assumption, I think, if we're going to really live it and really be with it, we are going to have to begin to reach into the toolbox of discernment. We can misinterpret the signals. We can think this is what we're supposed to be doing, and we're not. And then, for me, what happens is this fantasy world that I think this other person is in the same fantasy world with me, and his example in the book is how we meet someone and there's an attraction, and maybe we go out on the first date, and the next thing you know, in your head, you're getting married, having children, having the white picket fence, and we just go out now. And the other person's like, gee, it was nice having coffee with you, but I never want to talk to you again. How we misinterpret what is going on in the signals because we're afraid to ask questions to get deeper insights. And partly we have to ask or question not only others, but we have to question our own assumptions. Is this really real? Is this really true? Can I really do this? Or am I choosing not to, but I still could do it if I wanted to? All of that stuff plays itself into our minds, the willingness to understand, the willingness to ask questions, the willingness to really stand on the edge of the structures of our knowing and say, you know what, maybe this isn't the real truth for me now. It was when I was a child, excuse me, but it's not for me now. And conversely, it was for me when I was an adult, and it's not for me now as I go into that part of my life in which is slowing down and discerning and becoming the wise years. There's only one way that we become wise. We live a life of reflection, contemplation, and question. We begin to question life and who and what we are. So as we look at this book, The Four Agreements, and we move through each and every one of the agreements. They sort of build on each other, don't they? I mean, the first one is to be impeccable in your word. We recognize that our word has creative power. And so if we're ever going to change the assumptions of our lives, if we're ever going to not take things personally, then the power of our spoken word is the first and foremost tool to change that and make that happen. And next week, I think it's so perfect that we can talk about these ideals in the ideal. But ultimately, what happens is we do our best. That's what we're really doing, is we're doing our best each and every day. So as we walk through the agreements, let us continue to reflect upon ourselves first and foremost, because I really feel the book is about our own empowerment. It's not really about other people. It's how we come into our own power, to own that power, and to be and live a more rich, productive, and empowered life. Thank you. God bless.